I'm James Constable. You're listening to the James Constable Podcast on Get Radio.
Lovely stuff, and absolutely natural. Didn't even need to provoke you with that one. And it's a big show because James has got a shirt on. Everyone, ladies and gentlemen, it's taken to the third episode, but we've finally managed to get you in a shirt.
I was letting everyone down, I think, the last couple of weeks. So
it had been mentioned.
Yeah.
It had been mentioned.
Yeah.
Look, here we are, episode 3. Big thank you to the Part and Parcel here in my hometown of Witney. Big up for letting us in here and causing maximum disruption when I said that there was going to be minimum disruption. But anyway, also big thank you to Get Radio as well for putting this all together. Here we are. Episode 3 of the James Constable Podcast. The last couple of episodes, we've dealt with your time before Oxford United, getting into Oxford United, and we've dealt with the first few months of your Oxford United career, which have been crazy. It's been a mad time. Listen back to episodes 1 and 2 to kind of catch up on that. Chris Wilder's in. We left the last episode on a bit of a downside. United had failed to qualify, failed to get into the playoffs, and the kind of new manager bounce had kind of maybe worn off a little bit. Chris had been in there for 6 months or so now. We're going into pre-season and summer. Just describe, just before we get to the start of the season, what the summer is like after that disappointment.
tough to start with. I think we found it quite sort of flat. Obviously, we've got an unbelievable run back end of the season, missed out just like I say on the last game of the season. So that was tough to take. I think probably a week or two after that, you go away, you have your holidays, then you're desperate to get back in, and that was a feeling that I think Chris had conversations with a few players just to say, look, that's gone, get over that. Huge summer ahead, get yourself fit. We've got a massive sort of season, and as we speak about, I think promotion was the word of that summer and that sort of pre-season. Was
that mentioned almost straight away, almost like in the dressing room after you've not made it through? It's kind of like, right, okay, we focus next season, we are getting promoted. That's the big thing. Go away this summer and think about that.
Maybe a slight few more sort of swear words in that, but it, along those lines, literally, I remember we sort of came in and then I think we came back out, but in that period of coming in, that was this, we're not going through this again. Like, we're not having these, we're not having playoffs, we're not, promotion was the aim, and that was all that was spoke about really from the middle of the summer onwards and obviously in through pre-season and when the season started.
So you've had your summer away. Yeah, I know you mentioned in the last episode you sort of holidayed, but you're a footballer. You're never away from football. You've got it in the back of your mind. It's always there. Are you personally chomping at the bit for the new season? Are you buoyed up by the fact that you missed out and now we've got to do it this season? This is a big club. We can't have another season down here. Yeah,
I think where we finished, like obviously personally as a club, I think everybody, if they had said you lost your summer that summer and you were straight back in a week later, I think most people would have taken that because they were just desperate to get back, and it felt like a long summer of being away from everyone, and we, like I say, we're just all desperate to get back in and kick-start again.
So in terms of, there were a lot of comings and goings through the summer, as there is a lot of football clubs in terms of transfers, people coming in. How aware of it are you? And I sort of mean, because you're away, you're on holiday, you've got summer. Is it kind of like first day of school when you get back and you're just like, oh, there's like loads of new kids here? Are you told by the way these players are coming in, or is it just, right, you get back to training, this is the new class, as it were, for the new year? Yeah,
again, we touched on it. Social media was a sort of newish thing, so it'd be like the Oxford Mail, or people would, normally my nan or grandma would send me like something that would say, oh, we've signed this person, or you'd hear it on the radio. So it wasn't, like say now, you'd pick it all up on social media as soon as anything happened, the club, you see the videos now, like the blacked out person, and the light switches on and it's that person. So it's all a bit more of a thing now. But back then it was, players would sign, we wouldn't have sort of too much sort of clue as to when they were coming, but then we'd find out through the club.
Well, it's the thing about that summer as well, though, is it's not just a few new names, like including yourself, because you're now on permanent deal, whatever. It's 14 people in. Like, is there a sort of thing you come and you go, I don't recognise that name on that shirt in the dressing room. That's a whole team.
Yeah, it's like Nottingham Forest this season.
Yeah.
It was like that. But I think, like you say, they were all names we knew of, like we were aware of as players. And I think from that first initial meeting with some of those players, we knew these weren't guys that were coming in to make up the numbers. Like, there was players that obviously had sort of done well for us to a point, and then those players were moved on, and obviously these players that were coming in were sort of giving us a better chance of getting promoted. So we didn't see it as, like, say, loads of players. We knew that the quality was coming in to add something to the group and give us the best chance to get that promotion.
And like you said, there was there are quite a few sort of older heads in there, like you say, more experienced at this level. It kind of had that kind of experience of getting promotion, doing well at different clubs. Were there a few names that you could pick out that you were kind of quite buoyed up and excited to play with in the team?
Yeah, like say, obviously Crichton came in, Mark Crichton, and obviously I'd been with him at Kidderminster, and like I say, it was just players that just I felt would take us to the next level and give us that little bit of an edge. Like I say, the previous season we had games where we were on top, dominating team, not picking up results, and it was just that players know that sometimes you just need a little bit of experience, a little bit of sort of know-how. Chris Hargreaves, obviously Jake coming in sort of midway through the season was a big signing, and just these players that added us that little bit extra quality that we probably missed that might have got us over the line the following season. So I think as a group we knew that this was an opportunity to really go and have a similar season to the one just gone, but with obviously a full season under Chris and the new players coming in. We knew it was going to be a pretty exciting time.
As captain, were you ever consulted about transfers in any way, shape or form? Was it Chris's vision, or was it the club's vision to get certain players in? Does it, dare I say, filter down to you? I mean, you're the one leading the team out there.
Yeah, obviously that season, I think the 2009-10 season, I don't think I started as captain. Muzz was obviously there as captain, and I think he had quite a good relationship with Chris still, and although they were obviously looking to, I think he had problems with his back and a few little niggles, which everyone does when you sort of get a bit older. So I didn't think that he was going to be playing as much as he did the previous season. But I think he would have probably had quite an inside knowledge of players that were coming in, have sort of dealings with that. But obviously, as the season started, I tend to be sort of captain a bit more, and it wasn't something that we agreed, oh, he's going to be captain, you're going to be sort of vice captain. It was something that just sort of happened, really. It just fell in that I think 2 or 3 games in, Muzz was out for an injury, I was then captain, and it just went from there.
Well, you mentioned there about how you played with Crichton before at Kiddie. Is there a bit there where someone comes in and goes, oh, you played with him before, what's he about? Whether that's Chris, whether that's somebody in the dressing room going, new name, don't know him, you do though.
Yeah, you get that, and I remember saying at the time, you'll see, like he could head a ball near enough further than most people kick it. So I think it gave us that added extra, like say Foz and Luke Foster, and we had Chris Wilmot and Barry Quinn sort of the first season, but this guy was like say 6'4", 6'5", head the ball. I was on the receiving end of many of his tackles in training.
There's a reason he was called the Beast.
Yeah, exactly. So I think, like I say, he didn't have to sell it to the players too much, and then obviously Jake coming in, another experienced player in that division, leagues above. So people knew what we were getting, like you knew what. And also, I think as time went on, you realised Chris knew what he was doing, and there was obviously, he had a team behind him of people that put these players in, but these weren't just people being signed for the sake of it. These were people coming in to make a difference, and that they had took time to pick out and pick the best players that would give us the best chance.
Okay, well, you've painted quite a good picture there of going through pre-season and expectation high, as it always is with Oxford United.
Yeah.
You know, even the leagues in now, it's still, can we exceed expectation? The season didn't get off to the best start.
No, I'm back to bad negative stats again. But it's the first game. You've had a bit of a sour taste in the mouth at Kassam at the last game of the last season against Northwich. Playing, I've got to think about who you're playing now. First game.
York,
yes. Yeah. York first game. And they finished 17th. You're 1-0 down until the 87th minute before you turn it around 2-1 in the last few minutes. Nail-biting, just to say the least.
Yeah, it's always one of those. I think, like I say, we've been up to Scotland for pre-season and we'd had a sort of great time. We'd had obviously games back at home, and then that confidence was building. Like I say, pre-season's always hard. You never know. You might thrash teams. You might like beat the sort of Oxford cities, the teams that you play, but you never really know till that first game. And like I say, always the way, boiling hot first game of the season. Like I say, not a lot of new players come in, so trying to sort of settle into the game. But again, it was one of those frustrating sort of afternoons, and then obviously two goals late on that strangely sort of won it, and it'd be against York. Obviously later on in the show we'll talk about that, but it was like the pictures from that game are like this iconic picture of Mark Crichton scoring the sort of winning goal, and
it's quite a way to announce yourself.
it is. And then like I say, it's not something he's renowned for. Like I say, when I was a kid, it'd be corners, it'd be goals here and there, but to just be up in the box to score with his foot like that, sort of so late on, was unbelievable scenes, really.
So yeah, off the back of that, you then go away to Kettering. That's the time you drill home, or not so much. 1-1 draw, coming back from behind again.
Yeah, and again, when I look back the other day, it's the goals that we scored. Like they were very much. We'd done a lot of work on set plays, like a lot of work on corners. It was something that we did and we were used to doing, but not to that level. Like everything was the detail to like set plays, like blocks, things you wouldn't get away with now. Was a big part of what we did. Like we'd spend maybe an hour on a Friday running through every set play, every corner. But like the amount of goals we got from like the little cutbacks, like obviously that game, Kassam with sort of 6 yards out, free because the blocks had worked and everyone had been taken away from the ball and a goal, but it made a big difference.
I'm interested to know. So you get a corner, and is there a signal for a particular play? I mean, that sounds awful. I would tell you, yeah.
One hand,
two hands. You know, this is going in near post, back post. Just describe, like, for example, your job if a back post corner came in or something. Are you like, I have to run here, or I have to block this person off, or you're a striker, you're up there and what have you. Give an example of one of your roles.
Mine's not overly exciting. It was just
get you out of that bean over.
I thought, but obviously we had, I say, Crichton, big players that probably arguably sort of better in the air. So it's just like, look, stay on the keeper, don't foul him, whatever you do, don't touch him, don't grab hold of him, just stand there, block his view, stop him coming out, and then, like I say, normally it would be the other lads would come in and crash it, but I would almost inevitably hit the goalie, drop down, 2 yards out, goal. And it was a role that I quite enjoyed. I'd like to say every now and again you'd give away a foul because you'd be too physical or too much of a block.
We know it's more than every now and then.
Are we doing that now? Are we going to reveal this now or a bit later? No. I think we'll save that to the end, but that's definitely worth hanging around for the end of the podcast because one or two fouls. Let's just say that. So the start of the season. Strange. Like you said, I think the word that we've used a bit is strange. Results have been coming in. Maybe performances haven't been the best, but sometimes good sides get results when they maybe don't deserve them.
Exactly. And I think, again, from the back end of the previous season, we got a bit like more of a grit, determination that's scrapping out 1-0s, 2-1s, whatever. We seem to have grown a different side to the squad that actually we're not all about pretty football. Yeah, we can beat someone 4-5-0, but actually we can scrap out a 1-0. I remember sort of one of Chris's things that it was always like, if they want to play football, we play football. If they want to fight, we scrap. Like he's very much, we would adapt to what the opposition were. If they wanted to make it into a scrap, we'd have a scrap. We'd go toe to toe with them. But I say, ideally that he wanted to play football. That was his thing. That's obviously Sheffield United teams he's been at. You can see how he wants to set up. But sometimes it wasn't always the case. You'd go to away to Grays or wherever, you can't necessarily play football, and it was a case that we would adapt to who we were playing to get the result.
At that level, and I feel awful for saying that at that level, but are there teams that are, you see it on the TV that certain teams set up to defend, 5 at the back, 4 in midfield, 1 up top, it's done against big teams who are free scoring and all this kind of stuff. Are there teams that you go to and you go, they can't play football, they're going to be elbowing, they're going to be doing all these cheeky things that will give them an advantage on the pitch, set up to defend, not to score? Are there those teams that you pick out on the fixture list and go, that's going to be a battle?
Yeah, I say, not to compare us to Man City, but back then there was teams that would come to Kassam and they would just be there to scrap out a 0-0. They knew, obviously, we liked playing at home. We had, through that season, I think we were averaging 5,000-6,000 at home games, which was just phenomenal. But teams would like to come and play against us, so they would set up and make it difficult at Forest Greens, like, say, Grays. You go to their place and they'd play slightly different, but it would still be the same. They'd want to come and frustrate. And like I say, we had lads that could sort of get frustrated. Don't know any of those, but we
The
would
title of the podcast is a bit of a giveaway, I think, one of them.
we would sort of get frustrated with it. So it was a sort of case of managing that and actually trying to. A lot of the goals we scored were late on in those games, so we knew we would always create chances. We knew we'd score goals, but it was a case of if we could just control that frustration that teams come in to just frustrate us, that we'd always create chances.
Yeah, well, I mean, you spoke last episode about the Red Bull, which was absolutely mind blowing. Go and have a listen to the second episode if you have missed it, because the Red Bull before the game, absolutely incredible. So Statman Ted has been actually delving into the facts about this, and some of these things are quite surprising. The smile on your face is like, I'm interested to hear what this is going on.
So I've gone through all games for the season. You said yourself that if you're down 2 cans of Red Bull, first 10 minutes of a game, you're feeling a bit wobbly. So you scored 64 goals in the league that season. 25 of them come in the last 15 minutes, which we've already had two last-minute goals in that first game. You only scored 5 goals in the first 15 minutes all season. You did score 3 of them, so maybe you were all right.
Maybe I missed the can that day. I only had one, but it did seem strange. But like I say, it was like we spoke about last time. It's one of those you just didn't want to be the one that didn't. So, and like say, not everyone liked Red Bull. Not everyone.
Did anyone ever speak up and go, "That's why are we doing this"?
No, but there were sort of the odd occasion someone would come out and you'd see him sort of throwing up, literally like as they were getting ready to play. A lad I played with at Eastleigh used to, every single game before kickoff, like 2 minutes before kickoff, he'd be sick on the pitch and then it'd just start.
On the pitch?
On the pitch, yeah.
Wow.
Like there's lads
just adrenaline and just...
I'm just picturing somebody going, can I have a picture?
Yeah, lads would regularly be sick. Like when we come in from the warm-up, prior to going back out, a lot of players would just, I think whether nerves or the sort of from being stopped and then starting and stopping it, like say, would be sick and then off you go. You just go out. It's one of those things that's strange. You just be sat having a team talk from Chris and you just hear someone throwing up sort of next door. But
don't see that on Match of the Day every
no,
week.
It's one of those things I always found, it was something I was like, but players that maybe have eaten too much pre-match or hadn't eaten enough or whatever, just used to make themselves sick, yeah.
So we've gone through the first few games of the season. I'd say Oxford United on par. Okay, it's not bad. It's not setting the world on fire, but the results are coming in. You yourself start getting on the score sheet. Is it game 3?
Game number 3.
Which by all accounts was a bit of a crazy game.
Away at Histon, so 1-0 up, 1-1, 2-1 up, 4-1 up after bracing yourself, and then conceding 2 in the last 5 minutes to make it 4-3. Nothing is coming easy in this season so far.
And it never, like I say, it never did the season before. This season was almost carbon copy. It was like we get ourselves in a great position, 4-1 up. It says 4-3 on the paper. It says that on the scoreboard, but realistically, we're 4-1. We are cruising, and maybe just took our foot off the gas. Maybe just obviously, I think after that game, that took us top, or sort of into the top 3, and that maybe is a little bit of a reality check to say, look, actually, we are in a good position, but this is a team that we saw as a smaller team compared to us, but they could hit us for 3 goals. So it was just to make ourselves be aware that this isn't going to be a sort of an easy season. This was a team that was fancied to be sort of down there, and they were pushing us all the way. So
it's as we said there, it's the results have come, and the performances weren't quite there. But then the run was quite incredible from the October through, just banging goals in, getting the results, flying high.
11 games unbeaten, 6 successive clean sheets. To go from that game where you've conceded 3 against a team where you really think they should be at the bottom and you're challenging for the top, that best defence in the league. You're top for the first time in 2 years. You've got 9 goals in your first 11 games unbeaten. Is there something that Chris says? Is there a change in mentality when you come away from that Histon game where things have not been as they are? Where kick starts that amazing run?
I think obviously Chris probably had his say after, and I remember Mickey having his say as well, that it wasn't good enough, and like I say, you'd always get into that routine sometimes where you come off, you've won, you can just be like, well, we won, at least we won. But I think they were keen for us never ever to feel that sort of like, well, we've conceded 3, but we still won the game. They want to keep clean sheets. That's what they wanted. They knew we'd score goals. I think the 6 clean sheets was a club record at the time. So again, another big deal. And in that there was penalty saves at Wimbledon, and I think it was a big part for us to have Clarkey there, and we knew that had, obviously Billy Turley and Ben Hinchcliffe we had the season before were great goalies, but this guy was a different class of goalie. Like, we knew, even penalties, we knew there wasn't really that fear that they would score. Like, you had thinking half a chance to save it. So that made a big difference, but I think that's what we lacked the first season, was keeping clean sheets. If we could have kept clean sheets, we scored a hatful of goals. So,
well, you said there about Chris that he wouldn't let you just get into that mentality of, oh, we've won, great. And the end of that run, the 11th game, is a 4-0 win against Eastbourne. And I've watched clips of the game and things, and one of the commentators said that you guys weren't on the pitch at the end. He marched you back into the dressing room. Can you elaborate a little bit on that for us?
I think we were sort of halfway round clapping the fans when we just had one of those sort of like arm around the neck, and that was it. He was. I think we could tell straight away that he wasn't impressed. But I think it's a strange one. Sometimes, again, it's that was Chris's way of letting you know that he wasn't happy. He was frustrated. But sometimes I think from an outside looking in, it's a message to say, look, they might have won 4-0, but fans were aware that he wasn't happy. Yeah. I think every commentators 50, 60 rows up in the stand knew that he was angry, and like I say, we were let know in sort of no uncertain terms that after the game that we might have won 4-0, but he wanted like 6, 8, like he wanted goals, he wanted to sort of obliterate teams really, and that was his mentality. And you see that now with the sort of Peps and people like that. They might not march onto the pitch, but they're sort of hungry for those results. And like I say, we knew sort of coming in, it was one of those I wanted to stay out a little bit longer clapping, just to give him 5 minutes just to settle down a bit. But normally
last one in the change room that day, were you?
Literally, we would be in, and then normally it'd be, we would hope that Mickey would sort of just grab him briefly before he comes in and just say, look, maybe like, Mickey was the guy that probably be like the calmer downer, like try to sort of be that middleman. He was obviously the guy closest to the players, but I don't think he had a chance to catch him that afternoon. And we got ripped into. But again, at the time, we sort of come away thinking, well, maybe he's right. Maybe we were a little bit poor second half, a bit sloppy, but ultimately we won 4-0. We're sort of riding high at the top of the league.
I was going to say, is there any time and opportunity that you just go, I can't believe this is happening? Yeah. Like that seems a real example of, you've won a game 4-0, feeling pretty good about yourselves, and you're getting this, and you're kind of like, hang on a minute, I don't agree. Or does it take time for you to kind of go, oh yeah, and I see where he's coming from. We need to be better.
Yeah, I think you do get to, but that's like years after, because I still thinking,
I thought the next game maybe. No,
like,
years after.
Still thinking driving home, like my ears still ringing. But like, we've won 4-0. We're top of the league. We're like 6 points clear. Like I didn't really understand. But then I think again that comes down to sort of the Chris outside image of what, like, so he's letting everyone know he's unhappy. He could have got us in and done that privately. He could have, but I think that's him. That's his passion. That's how he is. But obviously, the next game, it's sort of look back now and think maybe that wasn't probably the right thing to do, because we hadn't lost up to that point. We'd been on a great run, and then, like I say, we don't turn up in the midweek.
Yeah, like I say, going from being top first time in 2 years, playing great football, scoring goals, not conceding, getting a bit of an ear bashing. Yeah. Things turned sour and quickly for the club. A bizarre couple of months, really, due to results and weather. Like, footballers will talk about momentum, and you've talked about momentum as well. Everything played a part for that momentum to be sort of kicked out of you, basically.
Yeah. And I think at the time the frustration, because there was nothing we could do. We just couldn't. Like, the games were being called off. Like, obviously, teams up the road that were chasing us were getting their games were getting called on, because
we said just before, you were 9 points clear And that gap just got smaller and smaller because the other teams were playing
Yeah.
while you weren't.
And we just had to sit and watch it. And that was the biggest frustration because we were still training. We were still running these sessions. Like, obviously, a Saturday we can't play. We're obviously running. So as a player, that's the last thing you want to do. No one wants to be running on a Saturday or doing a fitness session at David Lloyd. Everyone wants to be on the pitch. So for us, it was frustrating that it just went like week after week. We just didn't seem to be getting a game. And like there's nothing we could do to sort of turn it round. But the whole time we're having to watch that sort of nice chunk of safety net up there just being eaten away.
Psychologically, are you, every time you're running, up the field and in David Lloyd and what have you, and teams like Stevenage are, all right, taking 3 points off that, psychologically, are you going, they're going to overtake us? Teams talk about, it's better to have the points in the bag.
Yeah.
You've got those points, you're safe. But if you're being clawed back from a position of dominance, does that have an even worse effect than actually having those points and being top at the time?
Yeah, because I remember just thinking to ourselves, like, we're going to have to squeeze all these games in. And it was already stacked with, like you say, you had the FA Trophy, like all these competitions. And then you're thinking, well, that's another game that's got called off. There's another game that's got to be fitted in. And the whole time we just kept thinking, well, like they're going to slip up. Like they're going to have a bad run. Like we've had our runs and, like I say, we haven't played and stuff. So we're like, well, they're going to have, at some point, they're going to have that run. And it just didn't seem to happen. Every game they were picking up points.
Was the FA Cup run a distraction to that as well? Because you had a couple of decent runs and going out ultimately to Barrow at this time as well in this bad run. Are you looking over and going, there's a chance to be headline maker, there's a chance to be first on FA Cup match of the day with a giant killing and all this kind of stuff? Is that playing on your mind as well going through this patch?
Yeah, it was obviously just nice to have a game. I think it got to a point where no matter what, Oxford Senior Cup, it was just a game. Like, we just needed to play. But I remember we'd had sort of like games between ourselves in training, just try to keep that sort of level of fitness up. Because, like I say, you could train as much as you want. Like, match fitness is completely different. And I think we struggled to sort of keep that up without playing. But like I say, the FA Cup's always a special competition to play in and be part of. But obviously having them sort of beat Yeovil and done what we did to lose to Barrow is like the team that ended up being
becoming a bit of a bogey team.
Yeah. And it's never, like I say, never a nice sort of place to go. But to lose to them, it was like it was frustrating after how well we had done in the previous rounds.
Well, it's that thing of usually when you have a bad result, it's we kick on again next week. We go better. We do one better. We get a better result to come back.
Yeah.
But you go 3 weeks without a game.
Yeah. And we were just hoping that something would change, or I think even at one point we were seeing whether we could then swap so we were at home, could we play away that weekend and then obviously the home game swap it back and obviously with the rulings and the league and stuff, I don't think they sort of allowed us to.
Wasn't there even mad, like there were things to try and thaw in inverted commas the pitch out and doing all these bizarre things to literally try and get a game on.
Yeah, I remember like they had a cover on bits of it because it was always the side that had the tall sort of stand that would always be frozen, like where the dugouts are now, that was always frozen. So they would try to cover it. There was drums with sort of hay set on fire, like anything to just try and keep
drums
the heat
with hay set on fire
inside, just to try and keep the heat in the pitch so it wasn't freezing. There was guys with pressure washers, like trying to somehow like squirt
the ice out of the ground,
but ended up causing it to freeze even more. And
I don't think that's something that I don't need a science degree to know that.
Well, I think they were hoping that if it was like warm enough, or it would give it a chance. This sort of warmer water might, but it just didn't. Nothing we could do or try to do could get this ground to thaw out and get the games on.
It's not the only weird thing you had that year. The game that sticks out for me, Rich and I were looking at it yesterday, away to Forest Green, just before that, and you score, you go 1-0 up, it's all looking great. Power cut. That level of football, it's a nighttime game. In the video, it just goes
pitch black. It's because I mean, Forest Green. It's not. You're not in a massive town.
No,
you're on
the top of a mountain.
You're in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah. So again, we'd started really well, and like I say, I scored probably one of my better goals I scored that night, and I think there was a couple of minutes earlier, it was like a flickering, and everyone just thought, maybe it's weather or whatever.
The Red Bull's kicking in or something.
Yeah. We're going to black out. And then all of a sudden, the lights went out, and it was just I remember there was still some sort of lighting because we could see Adam Murray at the time was just like literally crawling along the pitch on his hands and knees. And we were just like, it was lit enough, whether phones or something, like it was, I just remember it being like light enough to see what was going on, even though it was 9 o'clock, 9:30 at night. But then the lights I remember just sort of like bursting back on, and there he is, just on his hands and knees, just walking, like crawling along the pitch, not knowing like that they were going to come back on. But luckily for us, I say, we managed to get the game completed and obviously get the 3 points, which was massive.
Struck fear into the hearts of the opposition.
Yeah, they said as well, it went out, it was the whole town, and it wasn't just the ground, and it was literally the whole of Stroud, I think, had lost power that night.
Blimey.
But fortunately, like, normally you wouldn't get it back on that quick, but for us, we managed to get it back on, and it wasn't a wasted journey.
So we're in this middle of this bad run. Like you say, the games you did play weren't particularly good. The results weren't particularly going your way. Lots of games were cancelled. The lead has been eaten up. And we get into the stage early January. Is it you're injured and you miss a few games as well? Is that an effect on you and the team? You know, striker, being injured and what have you. Is that had a knock-on effect? Is it let on that there's that you're not right, and is that affecting the team?
No, I think one thing I will say, that season was phenomenal for like the amount of goals that were shared around. Like obviously Matt Green and like Simon Clist and Danny Ballman. Like there seemed to be mids. We were getting goals from everywhere. There wasn't just, say, obviously that season, the season before 2029, 26, and like the goals were going in for me, but it wasn't. I didn't feel as much pressure because I knew we were scoring from all over. So niggles that maybe the season before I'd have played on and played through and stuff, and then probably prolonged the injury. I was like, look, you know what, like it's better to come out for a week, 2 weeks, and then back in rather than struggle on for sort of months and then be out for 6 months. So, and we had a decent sort of physio and stuff that would say to us, like, just come out. Like it's not worth derailing the season for a niggly tight hamstring than playing the game and going to pull it completely. So
do you know yourself? I mean, you know people know their own bodies and what have you. You said you sort of played on with niggles and what have you, and I think everything is stepped up in football. Yeah. We have amazing physios and kind of all this kind of stuff, and people get recovered quicker. Look at Ibrahimovic, for example, at 40, he's doing cruciates and then coming back and playing and what have you. Are there times when you're running out onto a field, not necessarily for Oxford United, not necessarily this season, but where you go, I'm 75%, I'm 60%, I'm even less?
I think people laugh because I've said before, like you could probably count on a couple of hands how many games you feel 100% fit, you're ready to go, like you're itching, you've got all your energy, like you're fully great. It's very rare. Like most of the time you're carrying, you see the guys, they got this sort of rock tape on, or they've got strap-ins, or they're taking sort of tablets before the game. Some lads getting injections before games. Like I think people just assume that every time you're out there, you're 100%, you're fit, you're ready to go. But it's very rare. Like I say, in a season like that season, maybe 10 games out of the 50 odd that you play, you'd feel like, no niggles, no injuries, no like tightness, stiffness. Like
it's part of that mental though as well, that 100%. Like even if you're feeling physically great, if you've had a bad week or you've not scored for a few games, does that play into that 100%?
Yeah, I think so. You definitely have that sort of drain, especially after the season that's just gone, and then this season, and we've picked up where we sort of left off in terms of winning, but things going wrong, conceding goals. I think that does play a part, but it was just, say, that the amount of games that seemed to be being played, we'd gone from not playing to then, obviously, then once it all starts up again and you've got like 3 games a week.
Yeah.
I think it just catches up with you. I think now that you see Premier League managers complaining about scheduling and stuff, and I think these guys are flying around the world. So we were on a bus, camel ride up to Gateshead for sort of 6-7 hours on a...
Well, the Gateshead game, we were looking at this 600-mile round trip, and Oxford fans outnumber the home support.
That's nuts.
Whether
That's
you're not
crazy.
feeling 100%, that just must fill you with that that energy. I'm ready to go.
Yeah, and I think that makes a big difference to the players. Like when you do, we are lucky as well. We'd always travel on the day before, so we'd go up on the Friday, we'd stop halfway up, do a training session, or sort of just get off the bus, get your legs going, then get back on the bus for like another 3 hours or 4 hours, however long it took to get to where we were going. So at least we try to give ourselves the best opportunity rather than just travelling on the day. But we would never know prior to the game like how many were going to come. Like obviously Gateshead is one you think, well, you'd understand if they didn't turn up. But you get to the ground and they're already there before you, and it's like, and it would be the same faces you'd see that had driven up and stayed over as well, and things like this. So you couldn't help but be sort of driven on by that. So they made a huge difference that season. I still say they were sort of, we had a 12th man, we had the funds, but they were the 12th man. They did get us through games when it was tough going.
Yeah, it's the support is amazing, and to sort of have that at that level, like you say, and going to these places is incredible. Going back to when you came back from your injury, Statman Ted will fill us in, but that was this episode should just be called Strange Old Season, because it was another strange game. You've come off the bench, 1-0 down, I think.
1-0 down. Yeah, Crawley.
Mm-hmm. You go on, and I'm going to deliver the bad news this time. Miss a penalty. Not for the first time this season.
I've already had a bad touch to set up Chappie by this point. I've tried to bring it down. I think it's hit my shin and rolled to him, and he smashed it in. But yeah, I did win the penalty, but this time, missed it again, which...
3 misses that season.
Yeah,
there it is.
Luton was hard because I missed that and managed to sort of make up for that, and that was a sweet feeling. But then obviously to miss again, it was like I'd scored a few since that Luton one, but then I think it was probably a case of I'd only been on 25, 30 minutes, so not really that long into it. But
sounds like making excuses, doesn't it?
I've
only been on 25, 30 minutes. I thought you were going to say I've been on 2 minutes. No.
It took me a while to get
going. It wasn't 100%.
No, that's fine.
100%. I think I had a strap and it was too tight, and that's why. But yeah, then fortunately, like a great delivery. I think into injury time, 91st minute, maybe 92nd
Another
minute.
last minute goal.
Last minute, and to be fair, after the penalty, we were banging on the door. We were desperate to get that goal, and like say, Chappie couldn't ask for a better delivery. Just put it on my head. I didn't have to do too much, but to see that go in was special, and even more. We Kreitz, a friend that I'd had from Kidderminster and then obviously Oxford, and still to this day he had lost his dad sort of not long before that, so it was nice to score, and obviously I had a sort of moment with him, and we could celebrate, and like I say, obviously after the game it was emotional that he would have probably sort of travelled to those games, and it was a shame that he wasn't there with us.
Yeah, that it's one of those things that I think we've learned a little bit about injuries and stuff. And you're absolutely right that you're going out onto a pitch and say, "Oh, you're 100%." Oh yeah, that hurts, and that I've got a bit of a lump there. The emotional side of the game as well, the friendship side of the game as well. You're a group of lads playing week in, week out. You are a tight knit group, and emotion has to play a part. And that I know from speaking to you before, that was a particularly poignant point for you.
Yeah, and like I say, a lot of the time you don't necessarily maybe take that into account. I know fans just want their players out there to play, and but there are a lot of factors that sometimes can play a part of why they're not playing so well. Like obviously, we look at sort of Scott Davis came the season after, and everybody was aware that he would gamble, but no one knew to what extent and what sort of levels that was going on off the pitch. So I think sometimes it's easy to forget these guys are human sort of beings, and they have sort of personal lives, they have families that sometimes going through tough times, and it doesn't always sort of reflect in them, in their personality when you see them on sort of, I think back then it was like Yellow Player, and you'd see them at the games and you would chat to them, but people wouldn't realise probably what was going on off the field, and sort of maybe stop them sometimes giving the sort of best version of themselves on the pitch.
No, and that's definitely a subject that we want to delve kind of deeper in, and I know something that you're championing as well from being an ex-professional footballer as well. We're going to dive into that in future episodes, which is definitely going to be really worth listening to. But we kind of get back to this season, which is, dare I say, derailed. What is the atmosphere like, kind of post? This is probably January time.
So, no, the real madness, I feel like, to set it up all the better, like you said about being 6 points clear, at certain stage of the season, you're 9 points clear of Stevenage, and when you get to the end of December, it's a really amazing stat. We always see that, if the season had started at this point, you'd be this position. And we talked about the last season, after the points deduction, had the league table started there, you'd have won the league.
Yeah.
But Chris's first year, he's in charge of 46 games. You win 33. Yeah, it's insane. But you go into the new year, and Chris says it's going to take something special to stop us. And just from there, it's 1 win in 8. Something crazy like that, 1 win in 8. And you go from being 9 points clear of Stevenage to 6 points behind them. What happens in that dressing room? Is stuff being thrown each game? Because it's accumulative that the 1 win in 8, each game you don't get those points, you don't close that gap, or you see the gap disappear. What's going on in your head and all the team's heads?
Again, we struggled to sort of put a finger on a team with the same 11. Like we hadn't changed any set plays. But we just couldn't. March especially, I think, was probably the worst month I've had in football in terms of results and the way it was going. We just couldn't. We were in on Sundays. We were trying to look at different things instead of training. Let's go and do like paintball. Let's just try to break up something or try to do something different that might sort of somehow turn this around. But we just could not seem to sort of get out of this little rut we were in. And like I say, I think we a few sort of faces, Chris Hargreaves, there was a few sort of players that come in the middle of that spell that they thought might sort of maybe that experience, that sort of knowledge of the game that might be able to get into the lads and sort of somehow try and get us out of that slump. But it just seemed to go on, and that month seemed to feel like almost like a mini season in itself.
Do you think you've blown it?
When they overtook us, it was, we knew we still had to play and we knew we still had games coming. But I think at that point we realised the run they were on, like obviously the run we had been on, to turn that around and for them to, we always hoped they would have like a mini slump. They would go on a bit of a, but I think deep down we knew that probably wasn't going to happen. Like they were grinding out results like we were earlier on in the season, and we'd sort of flip roles really, and then with the amount of games we had to catch up and everything, we knew it was going to be a tall ask to win the league now. We were sort of, I think, sort of within ourselves, we were probably looking at the playoffs and thinking, look, let's just make sure we make the playoffs. And because there was a chance we could have sort of slipped out of that altogether if it had carried on sort of too much longer.
Is that an easy mentality to go from? Because like Statman Ted said, 9 points clear. I go back to the famous example of Man United and Newcastle, which was a famous one for the Premier League about being that far ahead and being overtaken. You had this second chance, as it were, of the playoffs.
Yeah.
Is it hard to get yourself motivated for the playoffs as opposed to motivated for, we're 9 points clear, looks like we're going to be winning the league? Yeah,
I think when you're up there, it is tough. Like say, it's a lovely position to be in. You're top of the league. You're, like say, 9 points clear, but everybody was gunning for you. Like no matter whether Eastbourne away or Histon or Ebbsfleet, wherever we were going, everybody wanted to beat us. And that's not just because we were top of the league. That's because it's Oxford. It was always a big game, but it's never an easy place to be when you're top. Everybody's looking at you. Everyone's like say wanting to beat you. Actually, dropping down, it was like right. Now they're after Stevenage. They're the team to beat. They're the guys. And it was a little bit of pressure off, although internally the pressure was still on all of us. But I think for us to just be out of that limelight, to be like, everybody have written us off. They've blown it. They might not finish in the playoffs. Actually, for us, that was quite nice. It was a relief to say, look, going into games, that if we won, great. Like it was sort of gave us a little bit of a breather that we had, I think, 26, 27 games where we were top, like we were number one in the league. Actually, a few games where we're not there and the pressure's off slightly. Obviously, March finished and it sort of turned around a little bit.
Yeah, it really did. Just the right time. It's good to have a drop-off just before the end of the season because then the results did pick up, the performances did pick up, and something click? Did you kind of leave March behind and was there a moment where you went, oh yeah, actually, or is it just you're out on the pitch and things are just working again? Is there a confidence thing? Is it something that the manager does? Is it a collectively? Is it something that you're doing?
I think it builds. So again, for us, it was we knew we just need to go back to basics, scrap out a 1-0, do whatever it takes, come off your backside, whatever. Just get that first win, and we knew that would sort of breed from that. So I think that was. But we were trying to do that in March. We were trying to do it in February. Like we were trying to do it through the season, but it just so happened we went through that period. But we knew as soon as, like I say, we got those wins, and like I say, the fact that we knew we weren't top anymore. Like I think it was probably March, April time we realised that the league was gone in terms of winning it, which was strange in a way that was a relief, because then it was like, right, we don't have to keep fighting, and we knew.
It's crazy going from that start where you said that's the only thing you're thinking of. Like you said before, it's not talk of playoffs, it's talks of winning the league.
Yeah.
That's all pre-season was. Is that hard to come back from?
Not really, because I think we did speak many times. We'd have meetings, and Hodgie, another one that we sadly lost, like he would get pretty emotional. We'd have team talks where he would say about his experiences of, like, say, playing international football, like playing for top clubs, like discovering Peter Schmeichel from Man United. Like, these are stories that, like, you're listening to a guy that's been there, seen it, done everything there is in football. So I remember him sort of saying, look, you'll never get a better opportunity than this to do what you're doing. Like, this is the toughest league, arguably, there is, like, to try and get out of. And actually, like, you're still in a great position. I remember, like, one of the team talks on the training ground, he's just almost in tears, like, just saying, like, you're not going to get an opportunity like this again. To be in the group you're in, with the mates you're with, the fans that are behind you, that actually, like, this is sort of 1 in a million, really, that you're going to get an opportunity. The manager, like Chris, that we had at the time, that if we hadn't done it, might have moved on, might have departed. So actually, this was a sort of realisation moment that actually we could sort of turn this around. We still had a great chance, obviously, even if it was going to be in the playoffs. We knew roughly the teams that were going to be in and around it. So, and teams that we had beat, teams we felt we were better than. So it wasn't over, but we knew it was just going to be a little bit more difficult.
So the kind of the run gets you in to the playoffs, which is, like you said, that was the goal. That's the most important thing.
Yeah.
You're there. How are you feeling going into these weird semi-finals before the final? It's a home and away. Are you feeling buoyed? Are you feeling like you've got this? Are you feeling like we can get to the final, we can do it? Or is it just, it's almost like a cup game? Yeah, every game's a cup game.
I think, obviously, going into that, it wasn't great. We lost the last game of the season. I think they dropped a few of us, and which we didn't really want. Like, as players, you didn't want to be... I know they trying to get you ready, but then I think the semis were 5 days after the season finished, so you already knew you had that.
Well, it's match sharpness, right?
Plus, you're missing the last game of the season. So I think there was a few that were dropped, and like I say, the 5 days... As soon as the game was finished, it was like a 5-day prep, like a normal week, basically, before a league game. So we tried to not change too much. I think we were aware of what we had to do. Nowadays, like, some of these sort of semi-finals are one-off games and stuff, which is horrendous. Like, I think sometimes it's nice that we knew we had two legs. Yeah. Obviously, where we had finished meant we were away first, which was nice. So again, we were already not writing the game off, but we knew we were going to be home. We knew we were going to be home second leg, so we knew we needed to go there. We never set up for a draw, but I think we thought, look, if we come away with a draw here, we're going to win at home. So,
it's a funny game, isn't it? Because we were watching the clip and I, Teddy back, and it should have been a 1-0 win. Yeah. It really, really should have. Yeah. To this day, you're playing over the. It's such a cliff out in the middle of the park.
Well, I played with him for England C, and I said, like, how the hell did you get away with that? Because, like I say, the referee from the clip is just there, and he just pulls him to the ground. But then I say it's funny when you watch it back, he chases after him and after another, and just sort of shoves someone else, just because so frustrated that they hadn't given a foul. But we just stopped. We just sort of switched off. So it was something that we spoke about and said, look, we just can't do that. It's too big a game, too big an occasion. We just got to play to the whistle and sort of get on with it. But it's a great finish after that, and we came off definitely a frustration that we hadn't won the game. But I don't know, strangely probably gave us a little bit more we felt we'd sort of been done, really, and we felt we should have won the game. So we came out at our place sort of ready to go and ready to go to war a little bit.
Yeah, I was going to say that. So weirdly, I never want to sort of say complacency, but after the season that we got to up until this point, the highs of it, and then being pipped, it's probably actually what the team needed was just like, okay, you're a better team, you should have won, but you're going into a one-off game now. It's 1-1, and just describe the atmosphere, because this is one of the biggest attendances that Oxford United have ever seen.
It's the second highest attendance ever at the Kassam. It's not been topped since then. It must have just been magical.
It was. I remember just like say going and the sort of level of determination we had, like that again, coming back from the game and seeing obviously the fans, and I think we come together even more strangely because of obviously felt like we had been robbed a little bit, but that training leading up to that game was just, like I say, everyone was just so switched on, and I think we didn't probably take it in enough, like prior. Like obviously the game kicked off and we obviously played, but the build up to that and obviously getting to the ground and obviously after the game you could enjoy it. But I think prior and while the game was going on, we didn't really probably appreciate the size of, say, the crowd. Now they're in League One, and say that they haven't managed to top that crowd is just it's hard to sort of believe really that. Even back then, the amount of passion the fans had and sort of desperation for them to sort of give us that little bit extra that we needed to get over the line is just it's astounding, really, when you look back on it and see the scenes at the end of the game.
Yeah, no, absolutely crazy. At this point, we should just mention that, you've scored home and away.
To quote Chris, Bino's bang at it.
Yeah. To be fair, like I say, I've never had a manager that was so... I've had managers at Kidderminster and other clubs where if I was doing well, they wouldn't speak about me because it's like they don't want other teams to say like, oh, let's have a look at that guy. So they wouldn't sort of talk about you. But Chris was, I remember sort of coming home and I'd see it and I'd read up in the write-ups and he just couldn't speak highly enough. And I think that's a lot of the time why games when we were struggling, where we weren't quite getting over the line, you just find something a little bit extra. He was one of those sort of managers that would somehow give you that little bit extra. And like say for me, it was a great time to be sort of in that club, but I also have someone that no matter how I played, if I sort of missed a chance, I know he wouldn't, he'd be shouting and screaming from the sideline and giving me the eyes. I knew I was going to be in trouble after, but I don't know, I still had that sort of like, I knew actually he knew I'd get another chance. He believed I would score if I was in that situation again. So it was a good time.
Yeah, and speaking of a good time, made it through to the playoff final. Mm-hmm. We come full circle. We see York City here again. Mm-hmm. I mean, I was there, up in the gods, because there were that many fans there. I mean, just take us through your day. I mean, the fans see one side of things, probably from the inside of a pint glass for the first few hours, through to being sat at your seat, coming out. What's the day like for you? Have you slept the night before? Are you just buzzed up? Are you focused?
I think we were surprised it was York. I think at the time we believed it was going to be Luton, and the way they had played that season, we believed that they were going to be the team that were there, and we were already thinking of sort of sell out Wembleys because they would take a lot of fans. So when we obviously knew it was York, I think, again, this is sort of in our own... I believe we'd win the game from that moment, thinking, well, we had the psychological thing. We'd beat them the first game of the season. They thought they'd won it. We snatched it away. And obviously just the team, when we had played them through the season and where they had finished, I just always had the feeling we were going to win the game, whether that was going to be 1-0, whatever. We would do enough on the day to get the win. So obviously the day of the game, we went up a couple of days before, managed to crash the team coach the day before.
Just what you need
in Wembley, which looking back was probably a nice... We'd been dropped off our boots, shin pads, sort of took it in really so we didn't have so much of a surprise the next day, full of fans and ready for the game. So we pulled in stupidly tight. Why they've made it so tight, I don't know. But we've pulled in, parked up, done what we had to do. Obviously coming out, we've come round. I remember the lads just screaming, like saying, like we're going to hit it. We're going to hit it.
Close,
and then we've hit this. Hopefully it wasn't a gas pipe, but it looked like a gas pipe at the time. clipped it, smashed the outside of the window. Like, we didn't hang around. We literally just, I think Pete, the bus driver at the time, I think passed away recently, but he sort of backed up and we sort of snaked out and we just got out there as quick as we could and got a bit sort of further out of Wembley. And I remember Mickey sort of getting off the bus with a broom and just knocking these little bits of glass that were dropping all over the road just to get them
Perfect
off.
preparation.
But
Perfect.
actually, everybody was that sort of fear, that sort of what we were feeling about the game. It was, we were all having a laugh on the bus, and it probably just relaxed us a little bit more. Like I say, I don't think we ever sort of went into the game uptight or nervous, but that was a great sort of moment to just relax and sort of look forward to the game. Then nothing more could sort of go wrong. We crashed the bus. We've probably damaged Wembley, and then we're back there tomorrow for the game.
So yeah, you're at Wembley. I want to kind of go back to what we spoke about in episode number 1. You've been at Wembley before, and I found it quite poignant that you were there with Kidderminster. Half time, you're sat in the dressing room.
Yeah.
You're spending your goal bonus, you're spending your win bonus, and you lose the game ultimately after being in a very strong position. Yeah. Is that playing on your mind at all? Forget the team for a moment. Are you kind of there going, I really hope this doesn't happen again?
Yeah, I think for me there was definitely an added extra of like, I can't climb those stairs again and be wiping away the tears like Gaza and sort of crying on the pitch. I couldn't be in that situation again. And I know, sort of speaking with Kreitz and that, I think we roomed together down in Wembley, and we spoke quite a few times about that sort of feeling and how we had been through that experience. It actually probably gave us a little bit of something added that we could sort of speak about, especially before the game in the huddles. We would say, look, like, we've been here. Like, it's a horrible, horrible place to lose a game of football. So we could sort of pass on that message. But I think the lads were so sort of clued in on what we needed to do. But for us, definitely having that little bit of added heartache from walking up the stairs and picking up a loser's medal definitely gave us an added incentive.
So gets to game day. Are there butterflies in your stomach at any point, or is it more a case of we've got a job to do, we've got to get this done for all those fans, or are you there looking up at the crowds and going, ooh, there's quite a lot of people there, isn't there?
It wasn't until we pulled into the ground. Like, I remember just being on the coach, and we had a thing where we were allowed music so far, and then music would have to come off, headphones would have to come off. Like, there wasn't, you could listen to it like pre-match and bits, but then as soon as it was like bus to the ground, I remember like the cards were put away. There's no cards, no like people watching Netflix. It was like, right, now you're focusing on the game. And I think this one in particular, we had the pack of paperwork we'd have for normal games, but it was like on our seat on the bus, and we were being told to sort of read it and sort of take it in. And I think looking back, it wasn't so, like, you might have flicked through it, but we were just so
you're not reading the words on it. Yeah.
And there was messages on there, like bits that had happened in the season where like maybe teams had written us off, or like little comments about, oh, they've blown it, and then here we were sort of pulling into Wembley, and actually we still had ultimately sort of a huge chance to get promotion. And like I say, it's a 50-50 as to whether we were going to be playing League 2 next season. But I remember sort of opening my kit bag, and there was notes from mum and dad, and obviously just saying, look, that they're, whatever happens, they're proud, they've enjoyed the season, like reminding me of what I wanted to do when I was a kid. All these things that, like, at the time, it was great, but actually I was thinking, like, it's like on my mind then, just the letters and, like I say, how much they had been through getting me to that point, that journey to get me to playing at Wembley. And I got calls, FaceTimes from them travelling up, and the bus loads of people. There was buses from Chippenham, fans that followed me from obviously leaving Chippenham in sort of 2005 that had followed my career. They wanted to come, and it was just phenomenal, the amount of people, like say, pulling in was the moment that I think everybody had a little bit of a sort of lump in the throat moment.
It feels like a lovely way for the fans, more than anything, to cap off that season. They've had the heartbreak of last year with that Northwich game. To the start of the year, we mentioned it really briefly, the 12th Man Fund to sign Jamie Cook on deadline day. They're they're part of the club. They're bringing the players in, and then you've got the Gateshead trip, and all culminating in that final day at Wembley, outnumbering York fans 3-1.
Yeah, I think as a fan, as a player, the playoffs are the way to go. If you can guarantee you're going to win on that day.
That's so interesting.
If you can, no one wants to go up automatically. Yeah, it's great. You get your trophy, you get your bus ride and all the rest, but you don't get to play at Wembley. You don't get to.
We said this before.
We literally said, I wonder. Yeah.
If you can guarantee you're going to win, then your playoffs are the way. But obviously, as a player, like you just want promotion. But if all else fails, so you're not going up automatically, playoffs.
Well, it's the difference.
I wouldn't have swapped it.
Winning away at Gateshead to get promotion versus in that magical place. Like.
Exactly, and then like say something you'll never forget. And I'm sure they enjoyed their promotion, and they got to celebrate. But ultimately, we were going to be in the same league. But we've been through that, and we've took over 30,000 to Wembley, and like say lived just an unbelievable experience that we wouldn't have got if we had gone up automatically.
So, gets to the game itself.
Yeah.
And I guess the first 44 minutes of the game were perfect. Taking an early lead, bossing the game, everything's going well, go 2 up.
Your third goal at Wembley in 2 games, might we add. It's quite a good strike rate.
Life is rosy. You're almost getting into half time, maybe even just thinking a little bit about climbing those stairs and kind of lifting that trophy. And we mentioned a little bit earlier, the safe pair of hands of Ryan Clark, who has been and will be, does something a little bit inexplicable. When that happens in a game, is it, the difference between going 2-0 up and 2-1 in, York are back in the game at 2-1. What happens? Are you rallying around? Does anything need to be said? Does Clarkey know clearly that it shouldn't have gone in? Yeah. What are you doing? Especially so close to half time. Is Chris singling him out to say, don't worry, or is it just left to, he knows he'll be fine, he's a good goalkeeper? Yeah,
it was good. It was definitely going to plan. Like say 2-0 up, and I think Jack Midson had hit the post with a header, which looking back, if that had gone in, I think it would have been floodgates. So I think that would have been them done, and we would have gone on uncomfortable. But it's a strange one. He was so good that season. Like some of the saves, and I think he got voted player of the season from the fans that season, and just unbelievable keeper. Like I just even now it didn't help that it absolutely chucked it down for 30 minutes.
Yeah, it was real bad.
Which added a little bit of zip, but I think when he's fumbled, he's tried to sort of correct it, and then Jake, and it all got sort of congested, and it ended up obviously going in. But I just remember looking, and I think Jake's trying to say something to him, and it's just like...
Yeah, it's just glazed over.
I think probably fear of what's happened, and just a shock of literally, we were coasting fully going in at half-time, just that was it. We were sort of halfway there. So then actually thinking, right, this could be a sticky second half. But I remember... serene, like there was no panic, there was no, like I remember Clarkey trying to sort of apologise. Lads were just butting in before he'd even got to us. They were like, don't even say it, like you don't have to apologise. We wouldn't be in this position if it wasn't for you. Like you've kept us in games, you've saved penalties and got us points, so no one would sort of let him even sort of speak the sort of apologies because what he had done for us that season. So but then, no, there was no sort of panic, there was no, like say Chris and Mickey were obviously great, just getting us ready for the second half, letting us know like if we were going to sort of make any changes. But in terms of like negativity, there was none. Obviously on the pitch, I remember sort of after the game, Dad saying like everyone was sort of like nervous. There was no fingernails left. But actually, if they could sort of have what they used to have at Satanta, you could see in the change room, like lads were sat around as if we were sort of 4-5-0 up. Like there was no panic. There was no, which again I think comes down to that sort of prior 12, 13 days between the second Rushden game and Wembley. It was nearly 2 weeks. So in those 2 weeks, we tried to plan for every eventuality, down to 10 men, giving away a penalty, like anything that could happen. I think obviously we didn't expect to the goal to come like that, but pretty much everything else we were ready for every eventuality that could happen. So being 2-1 down, we would have took that rather than being 2-1 up. We would have took that over being 2-1 down. So there was no sort of panic on our side.
And then the second half obviously comes, and you get the third goal, and it's just bedlam. I remember I was sat at Wembley, and I really was in the gods. I was a very last minute ticket. I think I bought it, really last minute. someone had I think one of my friends had a spare ticket. Someone couldn't go. We were right up in the gods, and even that atmosphere then when that third goal goes in, because you knew that was it then. The season that it had been, the ups and downs, you knew it was there.
Yeah.
What's that feeling like?
Well, I just remember the second half just being absolute, like, nervous wreck. I remember, like, they had chance after chance. We said if looking back, like, a few months ago, I think it was the anniversary, but if actually they had a better forward that day, like, it could have been very different. And they missed really good chances.
Yeah.
But obviously when Reece headed it out, it was a poor corner. When I look back, like, the 90th minute, like, and they tried to float a corner to the edge of the 18-yard box.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
obviously we had Reece and that it come and just crashed it. But I remember Alfie and Sammy racing away. I look back now and where I found the energy, I felt like I see the referee and I've just burnt past him. I'm thinking, look, if he misses or it's saved, there's a tap in here for me. But in the 90th minute at Wembley, with everything that had gone on, how I've not pulled up or got cramped, but the two little guys were playing sort of keep ball with themselves, and obviously dropped to Alfie and always confident he was going to score, but as you're getting closer, the goal seems to be getting smaller and smaller, and I'm thinking just
the legs are getting
just hit the
heavier and
target, hit the
heavier.
target.
Yeah.
And then that noise, like I say, I don't think you'll ever sort of forget that noise when that ball hit the back of the net. And I think that everybody went that way. I just went that way, and I think I was on my knees, and Billy and some of the guys that were on the bench sort of come on the pitch, and obviously we saw Chris doing what Chris did, and sort of an iconic moment, really. You see that now, and like, managers didn't do that very often at sort of Wembley. So, but yeah, and then it was just a countdown really for that last sort of 2 or 3 minutes for the whistle. We were just desperate for that whistle to go, and we knew we could start celebrating.
And, the celebrations, this is the sort of culmination of the season that has gone, like we've mentioned, the ups and downs of it, being pretty much favourites for automatic promotion to, I don't want to say just about getting into the playoffs, but there we are now. What's that moment like when that final whistle goes to going up the stairs? Well, I want to ask about collecting the trophy, but that moment in between, because you're being pulled for interviews, their emotions were riding high for lots of other different reasons as well. You'd won the game, you'd get promoted back to league football for the first time in five years, I think it was.
4 years.
4 years, sorry. And do you know what to do with yourself?
So I'm still angry because I missed all the celebrations. We came in and we were like whisked off to press, and me and Chris, and we were sat, and it was like walking into like a mini sort of like theatre. We were sat there and there was just seats of people wanting to ask questions, like all the different medias, and we seemed to be in there for eternity. And then I came back in the chamber and everyone was starting to shower, and I was like, well, literally missed everything. There was pictures and there was like all the champagne and everyone sort of celebrating, and we just literally missed the whole lot. We'd been sat answering questions, the same questions. Oh, back in the Football League. Like, and I'm thinking like, I need to desperately get back in and enjoy with everybody. So probably the sort of worst part of the day was doing the press after and just missing, because now I look back and I see all the pictures and everyone sort of like the team photos and people led on the floor and champagne, and we literally just missed the whole lot. So it was a shame, but then, like I say, we managed to get ourselves sorted and get ourselves prepared then, obviously, to go and celebrate that night.
Yeah, and those, going up the famous Wembley steps as captain as well. Yeah. I mean, are your legs jelly? Are you able to put one foot in front of the other? What's going through your mind? You're lifting a trophy at Wembley. I mean, you've already scored a ton of goals at Wembley. Yeah. Let's be really honest. You kind of tick that box. Now you're going up those famous Wembley stairs. What a feeling? Well,
again, I just remember at the time trying to find Muzz, because obviously he was captain at the start of the season. It was something I almost like. I'm sure I spoke to him the night before and said, "Look, if we win, you'll come with me. Like, you were the captain. Like, you were here at the club before me. Like, you've seen the journey they've been on. But I didn't want to be the person that just goes up there and collects that trophy." It was a big part of obviously Oxford's history, and like, obviously he played a lot that season, and it was something I was desperate for him to be a part of it with us. Like, I know he wasn't sort of in the 11 or on the bench or whatever. But I think everyone respected him as a player. Like, he did a lot for us from his injury at Christmas up to that point. So obviously climbing the stairs and, like, say, just they hold you in a little area for, it seemed like hours. But yeah, we were all ready. We had our shirts and like everything prepped, ready to go. And I remember just going up as we got to. I was last to come up, so I remember seeing all the players go up, and every time they'd see a face, there was a cheer. And it was only till we got up and you could see, obviously, everybody there. We didn't know who was obviously going to be giving us the trophy, but Sir Jeff Hurst was there, sort of stood ready to.
It's not bad, is it?
To hand you a trophy, which again, being in the sort of home of English football and to sort of see someone that's iconic with that and obviously to be handed the trophy was strangely sort of just relief, just to say, like, actually we've done it. Like, obviously last season was tough to take. This season's been a roller coaster from obviously York, the first game of the season on a low and then a high, and the season was like that. It was no different. So to go and like say, I remember just being sort of handed the trophy, and it was just like, take a deep breath, like that weight, that sort of what we had. Obviously we were happy, but it was just really a sort of sigh of relief that we've done it. Like, the pressure's it's gone. You can look forward to sort of obviously next season, but ultimately just that next few weeks.
So that you've lifted the trophy, it's an incredible feeling, and what a buzz. And I think we're just sat here just smiling about it, listening to you recount the story. I want to go back to the time at Kiddie again. Because that had a little bit of an impact on the celebrations afterwards, which were different to everyone else. You'd already missed a load because of doing press beforehand. But just explain why your celebrations after the game were a little bit different to the rest of the team.
Well, again, we had sort of spoke about obviously the Wembley with Kiddie and missing out and having to come back and do open top buses like in the rain and all that side of it. I remember there was sort of half whispers about the night after the game and for Oxford, and if we won, we would go out. And I think it was never planned. I think everyone was in the same sort of mindset that we don't want to get ahead of ourselves. We don't want to. So nothing was sort of said too much. We obviously had a group chat, but there was no mention on that of any sort of goings on. So. Obviously, we've come out and we've gone across the road. There's a pub and we've hired it, and we've got everybody in there, and we're watching back the games like literally on loop, and like the fans are almost like reliving it, the family and friends of the players. And then we're just sort of getting this feeling that everybody's sort of one by one going to the toilet, getting changed into jeans, shirts. I remember saying to Kreitz at the time, like, we hadn't brought gear because we thought that we don't want to tempt it. We've been there before. We thought we'd won the last time, so we weren't going to bring anything just in case. Like, last thing you want is the gaffer finding your best shirt and trainers and shoes ready to go out if you just lost the game. So I say we didn't bring gear with us. We just thought that no matter what happens, we're going to sort of stay together and everything. And like, as it is, like, everybody else has got gear. They're all ready. They're all dressed, and we spend sort of a couple of hours in the pub, and then they all go sort of jump into taxis and off into London. And me and Kreitz were back on the team coach with the coaching staff, some of the directors. Obviously, the trophy came back with us. But like I say, looking back, I wouldn't have changed it for the world. We were back, got dropped off in Woodstock, and we were in the pub till sort of 2-3 in the morning. It was just an unbelievable experience. And like I say, it could have gone into London, which would have been great. But actually, we had a night, like I say, we'd never forget.
That's amazing, and just an incredible season, and to cap it all off with that. This might just be a little extra bit, and I want to go back into the season, but I want to know if the rumours are true. I want to take you back to halfway back into the season. Stevenage had clawed back this incredible result. There's a rumour that is still rife that no one's confirmed yet. What's that rumour, and do you believe it?
Well, yeah, again, around the sort of time that we lost our lead, and they sort of kicked on, and they're grinding out these wins that we weren't expecting them to do. And obviously our lead went from 9 to, I think they took the lead, and they were 2 or 3 points clear. But I remember I think it was in the build-up to the game when we were going to be playing them, and we got word that that they had called Chris Wilder, the manager at the time. Graham Wesley had called and left him a voice message, sort of singing Under Pressure.
Do you want to give us a little rendition now?
I'm not a great singer, but
I think we all know the song.
yeah,
Let's
So yeah, that was the rumour we got, and I think at the time it was one of those that a couple of lads found it funny, but actually over sort of time to think about it, we thought actually like that's poor from them. Like they've got enough to worry about without calling up a manager of a rival team and trying to sort of make fun or have a dig. Like there was still a long way to go in the season anyway. So, but yeah, it was just a strange thing that probably ultimately gave us a little bit of added impetus that through the season, that what we'd been through, what had happened, this was probably again a little bit of a sort of elbow in the ribs that gave us a little bit of a sharp that we needed to turn things around when it wasn't going difficult or wasn't going well. We knew what had gone through, what Chris had gone through, because I say as a manager to sort of have something like that happen is one of your fellow sort of people in your position is not great. So yeah, it gave us probably that little bit of added fight that we needed to turn things around.
Well, you say there something that's really nice to hear about. You really felt for Chris, and there's a real sense in what you say about Kreitz, about a sense of togetherness, and you even said that to us about before in the last episode. You were a lone striker, and you talked about modelling your game on Rooney and how you didn't have that pressure. You had a strike partner, and that was an important thing for you as well.
Yeah, well, I've said so many, like without Mids and Greeny in that team, we wouldn't have got promoted, because they were the guys that left me up top. They were the guys that they were expected to work back. They were the guys that, like, say, corners, set plays, they were back there. But then as soon as it come forward and I got hold of it, they had to be there to back me up. So these guys were sort of almost giving up their chance of scoring by letting me score, but being the guys that had to do a hell of a lot of work. So, like I say, I couldn't speak highly of enough of those two. Like, obviously, Matty and Mids, both good friends with still to this day. Like, I speak to Greeny all the time, and obviously Mids, we had a great relationship when we were playing, and I don't think people probably realise, like, as a forward you get all the headlines, but actually, like I say, without those two guys, you look at obviously the final, like Greeny scored a worldie that day, and I think he finished with 14, 15, and I think he only played maybe 30, so sort of 1 and 2 is a great record for someone that was not being allowed to sort of just stand up there like me. He was having to work back and do a lot of the donkey work. So, like I say, I think I'm massively grateful of having those two that gave me the opportunity to do what I do.
So a last little thing that I think we need to mention is about a game that was played this season. And we don't know if you know this.
Yeah, so...
This is a surprise. This is new to me.
We've talked about with you before, off mic, you played 698 games, so that's a bit of a bugbear in your career.
Yeah.
You want those extra 2. You're Oxford United's second top scorer. You're behind by 1 goal. And the 4th game of that season, which we didn't touch on, was against Chester. You scored your first ever hat-trick for Oxford United.
Yeah.
That game has been expunged from all history.
Yeah.
It doesn't count towards it. If that game had counted, you'd be on 699 games and you'd be Oxford's top scorer.
Did you realise that? If that game had counted, everything would be different.
At the time, it was like we knew, even I think after the game, that there was like Jerome on BBC Oxford had said like they've scored, and it was like obviously we won the game, it was a hat-trick, but there was still this cloud sort of over Chester. But I don't think we really realised, like we just thought, oh well, even if they did go bust, it doesn't affect like goals, or like we just didn't assume that would be the case. So obviously I think they went under sort of later on in that season, but it was only then sort of like the end of that season, they take the goals off. It was only as I got closer and closer to the record that I realised that actually, like I remember the last season, 2014, I was obviously desperate to stay. I kept saying it in the press. I was doing as much as I could. If I was an agent, I couldn't have done any more.
Yeah. Be an agent for yourself.
Saying like I'd love to stay, I'd sign as long as they wanted everything. And I just got that feeling that wasn't probably going to be the case for whatever reason. I still to this day find it difficult to understand why. Or at 29, I think I was at an age where I didn't need to move on. I didn't feel like I had sort of dropped in standards or lost any of that hunger. So even probably more than the fact that I missed out on the goal scoring record, it's the fact that I was moved on when I didn't really understand why, and I've never really got answers as to why that was the case. But to miss out and to be sort of one-off is tough to take. But again,
do you still have the match ball though?
I do have the match ball. Yeah, I do have the match ball, and it's got a pride of place in my study. But you look back on it and say obviously Greeny scored as well that day, and he lost his goal, and I think I got booked that day, and that led to then a suspension later on. So there was things from that game that stuck, and like I say, I couldn't play in certain games, but then the goals that I did score at the time were legitimate goals. Like I say, I always, on paper, I might not be, but sort of internally, I know that was a genuine game. I scored a hat-trick, and they counted for that game. So it's frustrating that it's not on the record books, but like I say, I feel personally I scored 109, and that's what sort of is the hardest thing to take.
Well, you touched on there as well. You did get one accolade, though, that season that you might not know. We said in the last episode you got the most fouls of anyone in the team the year before. And yet again, most fouls of anyone in the team. And you blame that on being a lone striker, whereas now you had partners, so there's no excuse for that.
No, but I think also that I did win a lot of fouls. I think I gave away a lot of fouls. But it evens itself up because I did get fouled a lot.
Not only this, but given that you played 38 games that year, which is 7 less than all the games available, you got the 4th most fouls of anyone in that league. That is a lot of players when you think every team played minimum 30 people.
Yeah, well, we had players, I think Clarkey, I'm trying to think who else, Danny Bullman and Cliss, they were like 50s, 52, like they were all over 50, which is astonishing. Like say the Premier League boys, they might play sort of 40, and with Champions League, they're saying it's a lot of games. We played, like say, we had people playing 50 games, but I think with people sometimes don't realise...
He's got nothing. No, he's got nothing. He's got nothing. He's got nothing.
Because they don't... Like, I remember when I got my wife now, like, she was like, she couldn't believe... She saw me on the pitch and she was like, this is the same person. Like, you're... But at the time, it was just... I look back now and I watch them back and I think, like, it's almost like, who is that guy? That's not... But that I think that comes from playing when I was younger. I played sort of a year, 2 years out of my age group. I got knocked around. I'd get back up. I'd get that sort of... And I think that desire to be successful, I think that sometimes is what you see. But like, say, when I look back, I think like, oh my God, what am I... Like, I'm chasing people. a lot of yellow cards. a lot of dissent yellow cards. But I think, like, say, it's one of those things that I was so desperate to win. I remember sitting in my flat when I was at Warsaw with Scott Dan, and he's gone on to have an unbelievable career, Premier League, and we'd fall out over like FIFA. And it was like, what are we doing? Like, controllers would be being smashed, and it's like, because you're so desperate to win, whether it's football, whether it's FIFA. Like, say, I think there's not many players. You look at like the Rooneys and players, Joey Barton, like they've got that little bit of something. Like, like say, they can go so close to the edge and sometimes go over, but that's what makes them that sort of player. So I think for me, that's how I justify the yellow cards. Basically, is that gave me the little bit of added extra that I needed to get the goals and do what I did.
Well, you've been listening to the James Constable Podcast. Thank you so much for the part and parcel here in Whitney for housing us. Big thank you to James, as always, for bearing his soul and his career on the line for us. Big thank you to Statman Ted for picking us up on all the right information. Do please check it all. Make sure he is doing his job properly. Big time. My name's been Rich Smith, and big thank you to Get Radio as well for putting this all together. We'll be back on the 4th episode of the James Constable Podcast, where we'll be talking about a particular big incident involving a club that are not exactly popular with Oxford United. That is all still to come on the James Constable Podcast. You've been listening to the James Constable Podcast. Remember to like, subscribe and share. We're going to have a new episode dropping every Tuesday. This has been powered by Get Radio, Oxfordshire's local radio station. Head to getradio.co.uk for more updates and details.